Maryland was in pretty good position before the MOVE Act. We accepted the federal write-in absentee ballot. We provided information via voter lookup of the status of an absentee ballot application and the status of the absentee ballot itself. We transmitted blank ballots electronically, and we never have had a notary or any other kind of requirement like that. So we just simply adopted some of the regulations to address the majority of the technical issues, and we opted to use our website to deliver the ballots. And I know Paul Herndson is here. We partnered with the University of Maryland College Park to do that. We had previously used individual emails, messages to transmit the ballots, but this created almost an automated process. Once the ballots are available, we send the voters an email. And then we tell them what they have to provide us in order to get their ballot, their last name, first name, date of birth, zip code, and a unique ballot tracking number, which we assign to them. We send the ballot to, or the University of Maryland sends the ballot to them. They print the ballot. When they hit print, it prints the ballot, the instructions, and the envelope. But of course, they have to mail it back. The envelopes include all the barcodes and UPS, United States Post Office things that are required so that we can accept the ballots back when they come into the office. Interestingly, in the 2010 general election, we met only 37% of the UOCAVA voters that received their ballots electronically returned them, compared to twice as many as the domestic voters. We allowed the voters, anybody, to request their ballot by the web this time, and the domestic voters were much more apt to return. I don't know why that is, but we'll be, of course, following that closely in the future. No, I'm sorry, 37% received them, and twice as many domestic voters received them. The return rate was almost the same as Ann's. 25% of the UOCAVA voters was our return rate, and that was much lower than what the return rate was for the civilian voters. We don't know why we had such a low return rate. Part of the reason could be the 2-election cycle issue that Ann mentioned, because Maryland honored that. And we also got some communications from voters because it wasn't a presidential election where they really allowed to vote this year. The challenges with MOVE Act, you've heard from everybody. It's the 45-day transmittal for ballots. We, of course, when we got the paper ballots back from the voters, we had to duplicate them onto ballot stock in order to count them. It was a very time-consuming process for the local election boards in Maryland. And the other issue is, of course, we don't control the election calendar. Our General Assembly does, as the Secretaries of State were mentioning. In Maryland, it was 48 days between the primary and the general this last fall. Not a long time, and I heard Ann say how many days we need, and those of the election officials in the room will understand that. As you can see, we've had a very short time frame there, and as we started planning for implementing the election, we said, well, what are we going to do? We submitted a request to Bob Carey and his Mary group, but we continue to work on it, and Nikki Trellis here with me and my staff. They came up with an idea that we would send a ballot basically 2 days after the general primary election, which would contain only the names of the candidates for federal office. Of course, nothing ever goes well. We, in the 8th Congressional District in Maryland, we had 2 Republican candidates that it was too close for me to make a call. Everybody else in the state was fine, but in this one it was just too close. So what we did was we printed up a ballot with both of their names on the ballot and told the voters to vote both of them, and then whoever eventually won, we counted that ballot. It created a little bit of confusion, but it worked. At least we got the ballot out by the 45th day. So meeting the requirement for, we got to obviously change the election calendar, which means the General Assembly and the governor, the Democrats and the Republicans all have to agree on when the primary elections are going to be. Complicating all of this, of course, is the rules of the national committees about when the elections, primary elections can be held to seat their candidates at their convention. And the other thing that's the problem is, I'm almost finished, is the national committees schedule the Democrats and Republicans schedule their conferences so late in the summer that we're approaching the 45th day before the general election, and we may not know who the presidential and the vice presidential candidates are. So that's one of the huge challenges. The other one is, of course, I mentioned duplicating the ballots when they come back. One of the things that we'd like to see happen in the industry is for the vendors to develop scanners that can scan ballots that are not on paper stock. Of course, we'd have to come up with all kinds of accountability issues to do that. But that's basically what I have. The last thing, we want everyone to support state efforts to adjust our election calendars. None of us can meet the 45-day requirement if we have a primary and a general election separated by 48 days. Thank you very much.